Hey friends! Welcome to another episode of Bible Q&A. Today we're discussing, how do we tap into Abraham's blessings? Well, first, we have to know what all of those blessings are. In Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 to 3, God told Abraham, "Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed." There are two main blessings mentioned in the text, and three people would be involved in each: Abraham, God, and Jesus. Like a construction project, God created the blueprint, Abraham laid the foundation, and Jesus finished the skyscraper, allowing it to be seen for miles around. So, in today's video, we'll explain how these three people were involved in this deal, and how we can become the fourth party, those who actually live in the building. The first blessing was that a great civilization would be created along the shores of the eastern Mediterranean, and that other nations would be blessed by it. Thousands of years after Abraham's death, his descendants, like Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 18 verse 36, and David in 1 Chronicles chapter 29 verse 18, would reference him and his role in building their nation. Very few other people have been remembered in history as being the descendants of such a long-lasting civilization. But God too would benefit from giving Abraham such a great blessing. God's laws would be Israel's constitution, according to Psalms chapter 147 verse 19, so people would see Israel's success and respect their deity as a result. As he said in Deuteronomy, "Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes, and say, Surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great, who hath God so nigh unto them, as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for?" Deuteronomy chapter 4 verses 6 to 7. The Israelites didn't just refer to Abraham when they spoke about their past. They spoke about the God of Abraham, the person who called him out of Mesopotamia to establish their nation. But what would happen to all the other people? All those who weren't part of this physical nation? People who didn't even live in the Middle East? How would they be blessed by this nation? Well, that's where Christ came in. As a descendant of Abraham, Jacob, and Judah, Jesus would have the legal right to take control of the physical kingdom of Israel. "The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be." Genesis chapter 49 verse 10. Jehovah promised Abraham that his deal with him would last forever, according to Genesis chapter 17 verse 7. But it was only with the arrival of Jesus, who would serve as Israel's everlasting father in Isaiah chapter 9 verse 6, that this would occur. In taking this role, however, Jesus would now move this kingdom to the spiritual realm, expanding citizenship to all of those who believe in him and his message. St. Paul explained the new citizenship rules in Romans. "Know ye therefore that they which are of faith, the same are the children of Abraham. And the scripture, foreseeing that God would justify the heathen through faith, preached before the gospel unto Abraham, saying, In thee shall all nations be blessed. So then they which be of faith are blessed with faithful Abraham." Galatians chapter 3 verses 7 to 9. Some Jews would not accept these new rules and this new king, according to John chapter 19 verse 15, but millions of Jews and non-Jews would, allowing the prophecy of Isaiah chapter 2 verse 2 to fulfill. "And it shall come to pass in the last days, that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it." Isaiah chapter 2 verse 2. How else could millions or billions of people climb up Mount Zion? Now, let's discuss the second blessing. "I will curse him that curseth thee." Doesn't sound like much of a blessing, does it? How does our enemies' suffering benefit us? After all, we're supposed to wish good on our enemies, according to Matthew chapter 5 verse 44. Well, what this verse meant was that the enemies of Israel would lose the status and position that allowed them to curse Israel to begin with. After helping the Babylonians conquer Judah, the Edomites themselves were conquered by the Babylonians and forced to move south. Centuries later, in the intertestamental period, the Jews would convert their descendants, the Idumeans, to Judaism. Other nations, like Moab and Ammon, would be assimilated into the Babylonian and Roman empires, at which point Hebraic peoples, like the Jews and Samaritans, were the only remaining political entity. God hastened this process not just to protect Abraham's legacy, but also because he didn't like their nation's deities and how they elevated them over him. For example, here's how he justified his destruction of Moab. And Moab shall be destroyed from being a people, because he hath magnified himself against the Lord. Jeremiah chapter 48, verse 42. By destroying them, God ended the worship of these deities and established himself as the sole deity of the region. Then, just as Jesus extended God's dominion from Israel to all who believe in him, Jesus will also extend this destruction from Israel's physical enemies to the spiritual enemies of God's kingdom. He said in Matthew, "Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword." Matthew chapter 10, verse 34. He could state confidently that his words would stand as the heavens and earth fell in Matthew chapter 24, verse 35, because it is he who is bringing their fall. He is helping Jehovah shake the nations, according to Isaiah chapter 24, so that evil ideologies can be identified and removed from the earth, as the tares were identified and burned in the fire in Matthew chapter 13, verse 30. And so, now that we know what Abraham's two blessings were, we can now discuss how Christians can tap into them. How do we benefit from God's establishment of a nation and his destruction of that nation's enemies? Well, how did the Israelites benefit from the establishment of Israel? They had to be circumcised, as Abraham's sons and servants were in Genesis chapter 17, and they then had to follow God's laws. Moses told the Israelites in Exodus, "And ye shall serve the Lord your God, and he shall bless thy bread and thy water, and I will take sickness away from the midst of thee." Exodus chapter 23, verse 25. Once those two things happened, they became Jehovah's citizens, and they could benefit from his health and welfare systems. Similarly, Christians enter Jesus' kingdom through baptism, the spiritual form of circumcision. "For as many of you as have been baptized into Christ have put on Christ." Galatians chapter 3, verse 27. A Christian's spiritual cleansing, the true baptism, according to 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 21, serves as their green card or visa. And then, to remain in the country, they have to believe in him and follow his commandments. Jesus told his disciples, "He that hath my commandments and keepeth them, he it is that loveth me. And he that loveth me shall be loved of my Father, and I will love him, and will manifest myself to him." They can then benefit from the tax breaks and welfare he provides for his people, listed in Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 to 30. As for the second blessing, once the righteous Israelites had settled in the land, God would support them in their battles and help them defeat their enemies. Moses told them in Deuteronomy, "And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. The Lord shall cause thine enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way, and flee before thee 7 ways." Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 1 and 7. Sometimes it would happen miraculously, like in Joshua's battle against Jericho and Hezekiah's battle against Assyria, and sometimes they would win the battle themselves, like in the battle of Ai. But God was always there, helping them along the way. Also, Christians too could use God's help in fighting their own personal enemies. Satan is always looking for ways to trap Christians and turn them away from the faith, but Jehovah is always ready to subdue those temptations when they arrive. "The Lord knoweth how to deliver the godly out of temptations, and to reserve the unjust unto the day of judgment to be punished." 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. One day, their enemies will all be crushed, just like those of the Israelites thousands of years after God made his deal with Abraham. And that is where I'm going to stop with this Bible Q&A, where we discussed how we can tap into Abraham's blessings. If you like this video, please share it with others who may have also been wondering how the story of Abraham is relevant to them. Goodbye.